Loan to us from NBC Sports in Jacksonville, amongst many other entities covering college football. Have quite a bit to go through our checklist today. A lot of interesting things on the horizon. Of course, PodUp with Matthews in the morning is brought to you by several entities. You want to be a part of the show. There's ways to do it. Meldon Law, Facebook Live. The only official injury and accident law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Also, YouTube. You can fire off your questions via YouTube as well. That's courtesy of Quality Plumbing, residential and commercial plumbing services, emergency repair since 1984. Their name says it all. Of course, Brent and I coming to you live from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you and small enough to care. Texts. Brent joining me. I'm joining you today, courtesy of the Titan MRI hotline. You can fire off your texts as well. 352-353-7465. That is 352-353-7465. Brent, a lot of different places we can start. I wanted to ask you this out of the gate. Oh, really quick. Florida Gators playing who today? We had a walk-off home run last night. We had basically, what did we have, 6 softball games because 2 of them went 14 innings. So Florida ends up with Dogs. That game will take place this afternoon, 4 o'clock, 3:45 pregame on ESPN Gainesville. So those of you that want to hear it locally, so there you go on that front. Okay. We're always wondering what this is going to look like. And Brent, you can attest to the back and forth on this a little more than I can between Georgia and Florida. About 6 years ago, they renovated at the time, which was, I believe, Everbank that turned into TIAA Bank Stadium in Jacksonville. They put new, it was called the U.S. Assure Club that they put in, and it reduced seating capacity. So there was talk that the Florida-Georgia game may be on the move then. They were able to bring in makeshift seats and make that work with a big payout. Now it looks like if it's not a done deal, we are on the precipice of a done deal in Jacksonville for a newly renovated internal change across the board down to the bones of Everbank Stadium, which would reduce capacity up to 9,000, maybe 10,000 seats for football games. Now, you could add a little more with bleachers for Florida, Georgia, but we're talking about knocking off 10 to 15,000 seats for a football game. So the debate, and we've danced around this and talked about this, but it looks like we are on the verge of reality here of that place shutting down for a year or two. Brett, from what you're hearing, what you know, got options, right? Home and home, just for 2 years as they repair that sucker. Home and home permanently. Tampa, Orlando, Atlanta. What are you hearing today? And good morning to you.
Good morning, Seth. Thanks for helping us as always. The Georgia-Florida, Florida-Georgia situation is still very much up in the air here. There were reports yesterday about that a deal was done, went on with the Florida Times Union. Some of the Florida Times Union sports writers came out late last night saying the deal was not quite done, but they were making progress. So that's good. We have a new mayor, Donna Deegan, who used to be one of our TV anchors, as a matter of fact, for the station that I work with. So Donna would love to get that done, and so would a lot of people. But I mean, the main thing is how is the new stadium going to affect the people who are going to be there? A lot of that's going to be, they're going to have, for lack of a better word, some kind of an overhang. Seth, if you're sitting right now in that stadium at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday, you can get absolutely fried. Yeah. So that would provide some much needed shade, what would be the immediate for the fan bases. But the real question, obviously, for what you and I do is, how is this going to affect the game? Well, the game will be there this year, and the contract is through 25, but there's still way too many things up in the air about this now. And what Seth described with stadium construction, Seth, this is really going on everywhere, is it not?
Yeah.
Stadiums are not getting bigger, they're getting smaller. And a lot of that, without going into a lot of detail, is they want to put better seats in these stadiums, more probably movie theater type seats to some degree. And when you do that, it's comfortable to sit in, but the seats are bigger and it's going to reduce what you've got. So there are a lot of options, as Seth mentioned, on the table. Athens, Gainesville, Atlanta. I mean, Seth, you've been here long enough to know Orlando would love to have it. Anybody would love to have this game, even for a couple of years. So, I mean, even Tallahassee would enjoy having it. Right now, that's going to be one of the more interesting things that comes out of this. The city council meeting is Tuesday of next week, so we should at least get some kind of an update on where we are. So without belaboring the point any longer, they're making progress, but there's a lot left to do, right?
Yeah, and that, it's one of these things, and we have seen this, right? It's been 30 years, but this did go home and home for a couple of years. Of course, Florida drilling Georgia a couple times in those settings. But, you kind of look at it, and a lot of these games over the course of the last 30, 40 years that were neutral site games like this have gone away, right? I mean, they don't call it the Iron Bowl because it's played in Tuscaloosa and on the Plains. It's because it was played in Birmingham,
Right.
That's the capital of America. So, I mean, you look at, and of course, Army Navy's always a neutral site game. Texas and Oklahoma there at the Cotton Bowl. So it's one, and I know Kirby Smart's made no secret about it that he'd like this to be a campus game. I'm just interested to see, because let's face it, the teams make more money by it being a neutral site game because they get paid every year. Every
Yes.
other year, now we've kind of talked about this, Brett. It's better for local businesses for it to be a home and home. It's better for the football programs for it to be, at least financially, for the athletic departments for it to be in Jacksonville, where they can get their $4 or $5 million payout.
Yes.
It's better for the coaches to be a home and home because of recruiting aspects. Now, with NIL and everything that's taken place, that's changed a little bit. So I'm just interested to see, you make enough money that do the schools sit there and shrug their shoulders and go, hey, man, we're going to open this up for bidding now, even though Jacksonville's got this shiny new toy. Tampa's done some renovations. Orlando's about ready to sink $400 million into that puppy. I know it wouldn't permanently be in Atlanta because the SEC championship game's already there, right? So you wouldn't permanently have an Atlanta. So I'm interested to see what's going to take place here when this is all said and done. So I mean, it's fascinating that we're finally on the doorstep of this, Brent, one way or another. Because I've also heard people say, well, they shouldn't remodel it. Well, if they don't remodel that stadium and the Jags leave, then Florida Georgia will leave because they won't be able to keep up with the Joneses inside the amenities. So it'll be interesting where this goes.
It will. And just to add this real quick, I think and this is just an opinion, a lot more than fact, but I think the city of Jacksonville is going to throw a lot of money to Georgia, Florida. It is arguably, and I think it is, the biggest event that happens in the city the whole year. And look, you've been here, Seth, like I have. There are 70,000 in the stadium.
Yeah.
There is probably, would you say 100,000? At
least.
Probably around the stadium in a mile or two radius during that time. I mean, it's a spectacle to behold, frankly. So it is, for this city, it is a big deal. And I think they're going to do everything that they possibly can in order to keep the game here. Yeah.
It's just like the Red River rivalry game, except there's no state fair in Jacksonville, but there's no rides. There's no rides. There's everything else, but there's no rides. PodUp with Matthews.
It used to be, but yes.
Yeah, it used to be. PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Brought to you in part by Comfort Temp. Comfort Temp Heating and Air, looking for enthusiastic, motivated comfort specialists to join the team. $1,000 sign-on bonus after just 90 days. Awesome benefits. The opportunity to grow with a winning team. Apply today, comforttemp.com. That's comforttemp.com. Comfort Temp Heating and Air. Comfort is our business. Peace of mind is our promise. Where to begin, Brent? We got a bunch of other things, of course, college football-wise, as we go down the list. One of the things that I was reading, your notes and going through some things. I'm gonna bounce around here a bit because I just think it's fascinating. NIL, monstrous. NIL, the quickest and easiest way to rebuild your team. And we have a coach that's actually pushing back a little bit against NIL at the freshman level. Boise State, right, deciding that we will not do any NIL deals with freshmen. Brent, doesn't that hurt your football program now?
Well, what happened with that, Spencer Danielson made the comment, if you're looking for an easy way and you're looking for a handout, don't come to Boise State. Now, they have walked that back to a degree after he probably talked with the sports information director and heard from a few other people. But the story mentions that it was quickly clarified that Danielson wasn't putting a strict embargo in place on freshmen earning NIL deals. What they have come up with from here is they're not going to prevent them from getting NIL deals, but they just want them to realize that as freshmen, sometimes you're not going to get what an upperclassman would get. So this got a lot of attention, and because of that, they have kind of put some limits on it. Now, Hugh Freeze at Auburn made kind of a similar statement when asked about Peyton Thorne, the quarterback, and was he going to go out and get other quarterbacks? And he said, we have a room full of good quarterbacks. We think we can work with them and they'll be successful. And we just didn't see a guy at this point that we wanted to go out and pay $1 million for. And then when we get into this with LSU in a few minutes, Brian Kelly said something a little bit too. So I think what you're hearing from some of these coaches is they're tired of dealing with this, and they are trying to make some sense out of this and put not so much guardrails on it as much as saying that they're going to be logical and frugal with their money and not just spend it on a name guy if they've got good maybe lesser known players in whatever position that is.
One of the things that, speaking of money, that there's a perception reality, right? That the Power Four, or whatever you want to call them, are stealing players or raiding the MAC, right, the Sun Belt, those conferences. Looking at the numbers, it's not as bad as people think. But one of the things that is taking place now with the group of five is, Brett, they're getting together, talking about numerous things, including their own top 25, their own TV deals, their own maybe potential playoff. What's going on with the group of five, looking at the Power Five going, we're not going to get stuck out here on this limb all by ourselves?
Well, what they've got right now are the crumbs on the table. They have got a one guaranteed spot in the playoff, and that would probably be your number 12 seed in the playoff, or it could be more than that. We'll see. But the bottom line is, do you want the guaranteed one spot, or do you want to do something to have your own playoffs and your own television deal? And I think that's something they really need to pursue. And they're beginning to wake up and realize that they're going to be left behind even further than they are now if they don't do something. They are never going to get equal pay. We all know that. they're not going to get the money that you have from the SEC and the Big Ten, who are the Power Two right now. So they're starting with some smaller things. One of those being this year they will have their own rankings. Now, I don't know if that will excite people very much, but it's a step to where their coaches will vote on their own rankings. They're also looking at what they can do from a TV deal. And the other thing is some of the group of five, the players themselves are realizing that they can sometimes get a better deal by getting a player from a bigger known school to come and join them and have more playing time. But Seth, for what you do every day, and you have a good handle about this, it's not much of a choice to me, frankly, is do you just stay with your one position, or do you take this opportunity to go out and see what you can do to promote who you are and get a deal and get a playoffs? We were having this discussion here yesterday on local radio, and the point that I brought up is, Seth, and you understand TV really well. Let's just say the week before, or a few days before, maybe even the middle of the week, that we have a Power Five. They have the playoffs, and they have their championship game a few days before the national championship game on January the 20th. Well, let's say that's Tuesday or Wednesday night. Do you think people would watch that? I do. I think if it was a championship game, I think that might get some people excited. I'm just throwing this out as a possibility, but I think it's something they really need to pursue.
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, we fall in love with days of the week, and I get it because you can charge more money for ads based on the day of weeks. But Tuesdays are monsters every 2 years. The first Tuesday in November is monstrous ratings wise.
Yeah,
it's election
right.
day, right?
Sure.
And then
Sure.
you think a random Sunday night in February wouldn't work, except when it's Super Bowl Sunday. So you gotta find your avenues there. And I look, this is how I've kind of accepted this, that I expect not to know what's going on in constant change for the better part of the next 5 or 6 years here until they get it figured out. And that's kind of where this is going to go, at least going forward. One thing that, I went to a Mid-American conference school. So, I kind of get a kick out of it because people are concerned about, my conference, and oh my God, I'm so concerned about them. Okay, I get it. It's nice. I appreciate it. But there's a solution then. This was my solution a couple years ago. You're worried about the drain. All right. If you enter the NFL draft, Brent, and you don't get drafted, you can come back to college, but you have to go to the next tier. Let's say you are, a Texas A&M wide receiver, and you enter the draft and don't get drafted.
Right.
You can come back and play, but you have to then go to the Sun Belt. You have to go to the next tier and finish your career. That's how I think you could strengthen the bottom or the second group of 5 to make it better, because you'd be people to enter the draft more, but you'd also start to populate the lower level of college football more. So at least one of my ideas, at least one of my solutions to make it a little bit better. You're going to get to your guys' messages coming up here in a second. Quick reminder to everyone, PodUp with Matthews in the morning is brought to you in part by Tropical Smoothie. Live a healthier lifestyle with bold, flavorful smoothies and amazing food. Tropical Smoothie. When you eat better, you feel better. And also, Silverback Concrete. Silverback Concrete builds firm foundations for generations. You stand on it. We stand by it. Okay. Got a bunch of other things on the horizon as well. Brent, we've talked about Group of 5, Power 5, bowl games. We looked at bowl games last year, and other than the big ones, right? Then even the big ones, people shrug their shoulders with now. Look at Florida State. Look what happened with Missouri and Ohio State last year. Brent, for some reason, the bowl games, at least the last 5 or 6 years that have been the most exciting have been ones where they dump mayonnaise on the coach's head afterwards. Um,
Yes.
Duke's Mayo Bowl, right up in Charlotte. Last year, they ate a real living live mascot Pop Tart that led to debates. What's your favorite Pop Tart? So these gimmicky bowl games, in terms of, oh, we're gonna eat the Pop Tart when he comes out, we're gonna cook him and we're gonna eat him, and then we're gonna dump mayonnaise on somebody.
Hmm.
Now we've got a new one. What we're calling it, the Snoop Dogg Gin and
Yeah.
Juice Bowl. Uh,
Yes.
Brett, this is me. I think I'd rather play in a game where I have the chance to meet Snoop Dogg than play in, I don't know. I don't want to get in trouble here, but New Year's sick or other bowl,
Yeah.
maybe not like Sugar Cotton, maybe not one of those, but I think I might want to play out. Well, what are your thoughts on attaching celebrities or at least cool gimmicks to these to make them somewhat interesting now?
I really wonder if this, how much of a trend that this is going to be. I mean, it's fascinating. This used to be the Barstool Sports
Yeah.
Arizona Bowl. So Snoop Dogg is obviously lending his name to this. To your point, there would probably be a lot of teams that would be excited about meeting Snoop Dogg. I mean, does he? Will he have a concert for them? I would think probably he'd do something during the time that they are there. But I mean, this is bowl games are never going to go away,
No.
but they are right now being overshadowed, frankly, as they should be, by the playoff, because it's been the other way around for decades, and the playoff now has the attention. But not only are bowls not going away, you probably saw this week too, but there have been some articles about where actually it may not be just this year, but there will be some new additional bowl games. So, look, we've all been through this. That's covered college football for years. You're going to have bowl games pop up. They're successful for a while, then they go away, and then they bring some others back. But folks who think that the playoffs will overshadow the bowls, yeah, they probably will to a degree. But we won't have less bowls because of the playoffs. And as a matter of fact, what I've seen this week, we may actually have more bowls coming over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and look, what's fascinating about this is I remember, I want to say when I was in high school, there were 18 bowl games or 19, and now
Right.
we're 40. And
Yes.
it's money. And I get a kick out of, and I go clip writing here, bowl games have become a farce. So I no longer watch any other games other than the playoffs because they are meaningless. Well, okay, but they've always been meaningless outside. There are more meaningful games now than there were before.
Right.
Because
Right.
back in the day, Brett, you'd have what, maybe 3 games, 4 games if you
Maybe.
were lucky.
Maybe.
That meant something at the end of the day. And let's face it, for the longest time, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 were locked into a Rose Bowl that was really meaningless because the winner
Yes.
couldn't play for a
Yes.
championship. You got lucky if you played for a championship, if you could get an undefeated at the time Big 8 team, and you had to go to the Orange Bowl for that, or an SEC team, and you went to the Sugar Bowl for that, and the Fiesta Bowl gave you a couple independents as long as one of those, or at larges, as long as one of those wasn't the Big Ten champ. So it was always one of those things that these things, they keep adding to it. But then again, I look at it this way. If you put more games on, you're going to have more teams with losing records. If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. If you want to watch it, watch it. I mean, Brett, between Christmas and New Year's, I don't even know what day of the week it is half the time.
Absolutely.
Okay, all I know is today, what's going on? Oh, Utah's playing Northwestern. All right, I may watch this for a little while. At least gives me options.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and what Cliff said, back in the day, you didn't have players opting out. Yeah, but you have coaches opting out all the time. So this whole players opting out nonsense.
And TV wants inventory.
Yeah.
That is very important for them. And look, one of the reasons Jacksonville is renovating their stadium, besides the Jaguars, look at it logically, that they are hoping to get a part of it to where their bowl would be more meaningful.
Yeah.
Could they possibly one day get into the rotation with the playoff? So yes, bowls are still watchable, and I think they always will be.
Yeah, and again, this is coming from a guy that watches Maction every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Absolutely.
Brett, and there's 65 people in the stands. Why? Because that conference has decided, you know what, we make more money on TV than we do selling this sucker out or having 75% capacity on the weekend. So it's always about cash flow, isn't it? Always about cash flow.
It is.
I wonder if, too, we get, and it's probably a discussion for a different day, but if we get to the point where the group of five stages their own playoff, I mean, if we get to a point where I think, Brett, we get to where there's a 64 team consolidation at the top or whatever, and they break away, then I think that becomes a reality then. But it'd be interesting to see where we go with that. We're halftime, baby. We're halftime. PodUp with Matthews in the morning on this Thursday, brought to you in part by Ruse Ogra State Farm Insurance, a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go in the right direction with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ograinsurance.com. That's OGRA insurance.com, or give them a call. 352-240-1779. That's 352-240-1779. Some individual conference talk in terms of individual teams inside of the SEC, and an overarching question as we head to the summer for college football I've got for Brent next. You're listening to PodUp with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Campus USA, put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union.
Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Dave & Buster's Eat, Drink, Play, Watch. Radware, your local provider of promotional products, uniforms, and apparel. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Radware, F45, Quality Plumbing. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker Sporting Goods. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Pro football legend Emmitt Smith understands your joint pain.
It does not surprise me that there are a ton of people out there that's in pain.
That's why Emmitt is such a proponent of QC Kinetics, offering real lasting joint pain relief with non-surgical, all-natural biologic treatments.
Whether it's a joint pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, hip pain, any kind of pain, the body eventually will break down when it's under that much stress.
That stress can cloud your judgment to the point that you'll just say yes to the scalpel or yes to another prescription of pain pills. But maybe it's time for a second opinion from QC Kinetics.
The reason why I would recommend this is because the natural biologics that QC Kinetics is providing you gives your body a chance to naturally heal itself.
Restorative, regenerative solutions are here. Get lasting relief and live your life.
Call QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550. That's 352-400-4550. QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550.
Moving along here on this Thursday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Seth Harp in for Shane Matthews. Of course, Brent Beaird with us on this Thursday. PodUp with Matthews in the morning, coming to you live from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Facebook Live questions rolling in, courtesy of Meldon Law. Most people not liking my Cracker Barrel shirt, but that's okay. Brent will live. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law firm partner of the Florida Gators. YouTube questions courtesy of Quality Plumbing. Residential and commercial plumbing services and emergency repair for 40 years now, since 1984. Quality Plumbing, name says it all. Also, Brett joining us courtesy of the Titan MRI Hotline. A couple of get back into college football here in a second, but Brett, I lived in Jacksonville for close to a decade. I actually remember the last time they hosted the opening round of the NCAA basketball tournament, because it was back in 2019. It's the last time they hosted it. It's been 5 years now. The rotation's changed a bit. Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville trying to get back into this sucker. I know they've made some renovations there and changed some things. Brett, what are you hearing about the NCAA tournament, at least the opening rounds, returning to Jacksonville?
Yeah, this was announced yesterday. There's a local group that has submitted a bid as a host for the NCAA basketball tournament. They're waiting the results. This was really ultra successful years ago when it was in Jacksonville. And Seth, you remember this. We were in the rotation here of about every, I would say, at least 4 to 5 years to get the first couple of rounds. I mean, the place was full, incredible amount of excitement for those games. It would be great to see that back. And look, let's put it like this. If you're a Florida Gator team, and let's just say you're 1, 2, or 3 seed in the NCAA basketball tournament, I mean, Seth, what's the chance, and it may be a pretty decent chance, of being sent to Jacksonville for your first 2 rounds? Think of the excitement for that for this city.
Yeah, and look, I get the Tampa, Emily Arena. I get Orlando, which is where the Magic play. I get it. But in Jacksonville, a couple times, I mean, they had some memorable games there. And I know a lot of the knock was there wasn't things for people to do, where they had to travel a lot. And, with the new stadium, and if they do get this thing built, be a lot more going on. So it's one of those things that part of the rotation, fine. I was in Birmingham for a couple of them. Brent, you and I both know Birmingham is not exactly Manhattan, at least down and around the arena.
Right.
So it's one of those things that
yes.
I'd see come back to Jacksonville. They made some updates, and what's it, Vice Star Veterans Memorial Arena now? Yeah, of course. And what they've done down there with the baseball grounds, it's a nice little place. And if they get this deal done, yeah, pretty cool. Andy writes, where do they play at in Jacks? They play at the arena where the Icemen play, and right next to the stadium. Look, it works. The thing about, I think, Brent, some people don't understand about the NCAA basketball tournament is these opening round series, they're not packed. The place isn't packed. It's not sold out. This isn't so much about, I don't want to say it's so much about ticket. You want an arena that seats close to 10,000. You do want that. But it's not so much about, because they do it in different sessions, right? They have 2 games and they break. They have a couple games and then they break.
Right.
So the only time that ever becomes a problem is they try their damnedest to make sure, like Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke, at a time, Indiana, Kansas, that you don't have 2 of those in the same spot.
Correct.
Because they overwhelm the hotel situation and what have you. So that's what they try to do anyway when it comes to that. So good stuff on that front. Individually, here we are. Spring ball's in the rearview mirror, Brent, right? We got 3 months?
Oh, yes.
We're 2.5 months away from SEC Media Days. Looking at things, I see that the odds makers have come out and said that it's Ohio State and Georgia that are the 2 favorites now, at least for the college football playoff, which is interesting with Texas in here. With the new system, Brent, I'm trying to sit here and rack my brain inside of the SEC because it's going to look different, right? No more divisions.
It is. That's right.
I'm trying to think, we put Texas and Georgia just a step above everybody else. Brent, who do you, from what your knowledge and all your notes and the teams here, if it's not Texas and Georgia, who do we put in that next group of 3 or 4 that we could see there instead of or in the place of either one of those two?
Well, and that's just a question because we're going to have to look at college football differently than we ever have. What we're used to playing in divisions, and we're used to having 4 teams. Now we've got 12, so that broadens the outlook on where we are. And the way we've been looking at it this week has been look at now. Probably on any given year, and let's be honest about this, that the 2 power conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, they're probably going to have, what, Seth, 4 teams in every year. So for this year, to go back with what you're saying, Georgia, Texas, I think Alabama is going to be a real possibility. Ole Miss is going to be a real possibility because of how they've done in the transfer portal, and maybe even a Missouri. So I think that's a way we will end up looking at this will be what 4 teams are likely to get in. And see, the great thing about expanding the playoff is if we go down as far as having 4 instead of just 1 as we normally would, the reality would be the expansion of the playoff is tremendous for teams like Ole Miss and Penn State and Missouri and teams like that, right, Seth? Because they, unlike before, they have a real opportunity to get in. This increases the interest and the excitement, and it's going to be fascinating how we're going to start looking at preseason magazines and the polls coming up the next few years.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple weeks ago the 4 teams that benefit the most from the college football playoff expanding. Just not this year, but over the course of the last 10 years, there's no team that would have benefited more than Penn State. I think Penn State would have made a 12-team playoff like 4 or 5 times the last 10 years.
Yes.
And they just didn't get to be a part of it. The other thing is, we've seen years where Georgia didn't make it this year. We've seen years where Alabama didn't make it. I don't see any way Georgia, as long as Kirby Smart's the head coach there. Brent, is there more of a lock than Georgia making the college football playoff every year, no matter what?
I agree. At this point, probably there's not.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of one of those things that rolls in that direction. Let's see your questions rolling in. Brian, pretty good one actually here. I love smart questions. He says, Seth, Brent, it seems that college athletics not equipped to handle NIL. Congress not going to touch it. College presidents don't know what they're doing, nor does the NCAA. Big conferences feel like it's just a money grab or gap for them. Is there hope to looking for some optimism? That's from Brian. Brian, I'll start off with this. It's not that they don't know what they're doing. It's that they don't want to get sued. The NCAA came in and said, you can't make money. You can't make money on this. And then they drug them all to the Supreme Court. What was it, 801 or 90? Brian, I don't think the NCAA presidents don't know what they're doing. They just know that the minute they get involved with this, then all of a sudden the spotlight goes to them, and they'd much rather let the NCAA get sued than themselves get sued.
Well, and that's a really good point. One of the things that the revenue sharing is going to mean is the fact that they're going to dedicate money to get rid of these lawsuits. There's a big lawsuit, and I'll be brief about this. There's a big lawsuit called House versus the NCAA, and they're going to have to pay about $2.7 billion to get rid of this lawsuit. But that's going to be incredibly important to be able to do that. And then after they get rid of this lawsuit, that they can get down to to trying to do something a little bit different with this. It's a different day. We don't have this amateur model that we used to have. And look, there was some value to that. I get it. But we're in a day and age where we're going to be like an NFL model, and that's coming. We don't have to like it, but it's coming because that is the way, as Seth mentioned this a minute ago, you're only going to get so much help from Congress. Now, what Congress may be able to do is to keep them out of lawsuits, with some advice from them with that. But the SEC and the Big Ten are going to expand further, and they're going to go to about 20 schools. FSU and Clemson are leaving the ACC, maybe even as soon as this summer. So that's another thing that you're looking at. Get rid of the lawsuits. We're going to have some kind of what, Seth? Collective bargaining. There's going to be a contract. Look, I know college football fans aren't in love with this, but that's where we're going with it. And a lot of people think we should have been here years ago. But I understand the question, as you said, it's an astute question, but whether we like it or not, a lot of these things we just talked about are going to be the norm over the next few years.
Yeah, and it's capitalism, right? It's
yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean the one system, and it's kind of rough when you try to explain this to people, Brett. But the reason teams can exist in Buffalo and Jacksonville and Cincinnati and Kansas City in the NFL is because teams like Dallas and New York and the Patriots pay more money, or the share they pool their revenue. If you took all the revenue in the SEC, and they do pool it for the SEC network and contracts, but if you pooled all revenue for NIL money that you could make, then it would be fair, right? Everything would be up to stuff. But you don't do that right now, because why don't you do that? Because you're not collectively bargained that way. So I've said for years now, if you really want to fix it, and that's just it. Schools like Texas A&M and Arkansas don't want it to fix. Why? Because they right now have a legitimate advantage. Arkansas just pried Calipari away. Kentucky,
absolutely.
So they're going to spend $20 million in NIL. A school like Memphis doesn't want to change it, Brett, because FedEx just gave them $25 million just for NIL. Right. So why would they want to change it? So now schools in the past that it wasn't fair for them, the balance has shifted just because of where they are geographically or who their boosters are. So they're saying, why do we want to change this? We actually have a leg up now. So, conflicting interests. It's kind of where we're going here. So it's not a simple solution. I said, you make them all employees, you have them sign 2-year contracts. That way you're only dealing with transfers every 2 years. Better than after every spring game, or every week. Speaking of transfers, I've got a transfer question for you, a portal question when it comes to a couple Gators here. PodUp with Matthews in the morning on this Thursday, brought to you by Comfort Temp Heating and Air. They're looking for an enthusiastic, motivated comfort specialist to join the team. $1,000 sign-on bonus after just 90 days. Great benefits, opportunity to grow with a winning team. Going to be a lot of work coming up here too, right? As we hit the scolding season here in Gainesville. Comfort Temp Heating and Air. Comfort is their business. Peace of mind is the promise. You can check them out at comforttemp.com. That's comforttemp.com. Portal trying to bring guys in, recruiting wise for the Gators. I know, Brett, you have your fingers on the pulse of a lot of this stuff as we hit the middle of May here. I saw Florida interested in wide receivers. What are you hearing, at least from the Gators perspective now, of a couple of guys that are on Billy Napier's radar here as we hit the summer?
To throw out a couple of names, Elijah Badger is the number one transfer available for wide receivers, and I understand that he will officially visit Florida May 14th through 16th. So he is well thought of. Comes from Arizona State. It's almost amusing how many Arizona State ties and players that Florida ends up dealing with at some point. Also, Hollis Davidson, the tight end, has decommitted and he is, and it looks like he decommitted from Auburn and has scheduled a trip to Florida. That's going to be an official visit. So yes, there would still be more of this that will be going on. And you can also look for, and Seth and I have talked about this now for years, they've got to rearrange the recruiting calendar. And they're doing that. They're doing a better job of that. You remember, Seth, when we've got instead of one or two things to deal with in December,
Yeah.
They had about half a dozen.
Yeah.
Well, that's better. So the thing they're doing, and to say this quickly, is they're trying to spread some of this calendar out and make it a lot more logical than it's been over the last few years, where it's just been absolutely insane and crazy.
He is Brent Beaird. I am Seth Harp. PodUp with Matthews in the morning here with you on this Thursday, May 9th. PodUp brought to you in part by Campus USA, a credit union. Put some star power to your work and your financial life with Campus USA, Campus USA Credit Union. Again, every time I bring them up, help me get my car. Nice red Lamborghini. And I can't thank them enough for helping me out. I actually had somebody wrote, what actually is your car? Yeah, all right. I'm going to tell you guys. Probably just come key it for fun. Based on some of the reactions I see over here. Okay, a couple other things before we wrap this up here on this Thursday. Of course, as I mentioned, Brent Beaird in with us today. Florida State, Clemson. Let's face it; these are the last two pillars. We've had chaos in the past, Brent, with cycling, changing. They've sued. The court systems are kind of kicking this back around. You're talking about $100 million, $200 million payouts in order to get out of this, the ACC contract. If those two are on the move, or if they're out of that conference, then that conference starts to slip and fall apart as well, or almost becomes like the Big East in basketball, if you will. What's the latest? What are you hearing in terms of Florida State, Clemson, and what's going on here lawsuit wise as those two try to force their way out of the Atlantic Coast Conference?
Florida State's led this movement. They've been the most vocal about it, but Clemson is right behind them. They are just kind of taking a different attack at going at it more than Florida State did, or differently than Florida State did. But that's kind of what I've heard and certainly read over the last several months is, and again, we got to keep this in mind. There's a date in August, I think it's like the 15th, that if you're going to move out of a conference, you've got to let them know. So we will hear something before like August the 15th that Florida State's going to leave. And that will mean they'll play in the ACC this year, but they will announce that they are leaving and going. I still think they're probably going to the Big Ten, because the Big Ten would love to. I know you've lived up there, Seth. They would love to have a recruiting base in Florida. That would mean a lot to them. So that would be very important. And also the other reality for this is, I think the third team that's going to leave is going to be probably North Carolina. And North Carolina is very coveted between the Big Ten and the SEC for a variety of reasons, not only athletics, but also because North Carolina is an AAU school. I'm curious, when you lived up there, what a big deal this was, but it is now. And what we mean by that is the AAU, that moniker is it represents, it's a label that schools covet, that they are a prestige academic school. Now, Seth, that doesn't mean a whole lot to the average fan, but the people making these decisions, presidents and chancellors, that is a big deal to them, and they're the ones who ultimately make these decisions, along with television. So, I think in essence, Florida State is just basically negotiating to get the. I mean, someone's figured out for them to leave the ACC, it would cost them about $500 million. Well, what they're trying to do is obviously get that money negotiated down so they can get a break and the ACC make some money. But it's just really a matter of time before these schools are, as you said a few minutes ago, will be leaving the ACC.
Yeah, and then whatever we have, whatever model that it is, if it's a region college football, the Southern Conference, the Eastern Conference, whatever that model ends up looking like.
Right.
And yeah, the Big Ten with Northwestern, they, adding Oregon and Washington, that acronym, not that they consider themselves the Ivy League, but they do feel that if they're going to add a program, they want it to have some academic value. That's
Yes.
why North Carolina, you mentioned North Carolina. And the other one that people mention a lot up there is Miami, because it gives them a top 10 media market and it's a private school. And
Sure.
and the academics at Miami are tough. So it's similar boat when it comes to all that. The one thing is that whatever you think it's going to change. It's constantly going to change. And we are just in an era now where schools and conferences are like free agents in football. Not only do you have a trade, Brent, that's what I try to tell people. People get mad at the athletes for opting out and complaining and always wanting to leave. Schools do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Schools are
Right,
constantly in the
right.
transfer portal too.
Sure.
So financially, it's just the way it is. Let's see here. Anything else going on as we head into the weekend? Quick reminder for a couple people here. SEC baseball, of course, this weekend. Florida series with Kentucky on the station starting tomorrow on WRUF. Also, softball tonight. With the win tonight, Florida will likely play Texas A&M. Semifinals Friday, and then would play in the championship game if that snakes all its way through. Likely staring at Tennessee. Why is it important? Because it looks like if they are able to find their way to the SEC championship game, they're going to be in super regional status in terms of hosting a super regional. So, ladies, Tim Walton's squad really, really, really hot this year, closing down the stretch. So, got it quite the busy next few days when it comes to the games being aired on ESPN 98.1 FM 850 AM WRUF. So all on that front. There we go. Final thoughts, Brent Beaird, before we bid adieu here on this Thursday.
Well, one thing, Shane Beamer has already announced that Lenore Sellers is going to be their starting quarterback coming out of the spring. Now, his backup is Auburn transfer Robbie Ashford. So that's unusual in some ways to go ahead and announce your quarterback, because what you normally hear is, well, we'll let the competition go throughout the summer. So that's one thing that they're looking at with that too. And I'll make this final point again of what you're saying is the reason that teams want to be in the Big Ten and the SEC is they are making substantially more money than they do in the Big 12 in the ACC. I mean, the gap is. I mean, there have been people who have projected this out to where sooner than later the Big Ten are going to be making in the SEC like $100 million per school. And even with a bonus, the ACC and the Big 12 would probably be making maybe 50. So, Seth, it doesn't take long to do the math in those situations, does it? To see where the structure of these conference and the order of these conferences are going to be.
Yeah, and I used to talk to a buddy of mine that was in the ACC. He's like, "Oh, we got boosters. We can make that up." I'm like, "Yeah, for a year." But if once,
right.
This is 15 years ago, and it was when the SEC was doing $22 million a year, and the ACC was doing $8 million. And I remember telling them, like, "Yeah, that $14 million, we can make that up with boosters." Well, then the SEC gets to add boosters to their 4A2, right? So $14 million a year doesn't sound like a lot. Now it's $40 million, but $14 million a year over the course of a decade is $140 million. That's a lot. That's a lot. And now over the course, if you're Florida State and you can't get out of this deal, then over the course of a decade, Florida will be able to bring in $500 million more
Right.
than you.
Yeah, no question.
That's a stadium.
Yeah.
That's a new stadium.
It is, isn't it? Absolutely, it is. Yes.
So yeah, it does matter. Brent Beaird with us here on this Thursday. Seth Harp. I can't thank you enough, Brent, for swinging by here on this Thursday. Appreciate, love talking college football with you, Brent. They say nothing's going on. You kidding me? We just did 56 minutes and didn't even blink an eye. We could do 256 minutes, man.
Well, and listen, we're about 3 weeks away from the preseason magazines.
Yeah.
Lindy's and Athlon will be out. Phil Steele will be out by the 4th of July. As you mentioned, we'll be in SEC Media Days. And then we'll be talking about week 0. So it comes very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I signed that contract the other day for week 0, so we're carrying week 0 here.
And let me say this on the way. Yes, I live and work in the Jacksonville area. I live in Clay County, but I can tell you this: I listen to 850 a lot because I'm in the car, and I am constantly amazed at the different sports teams and so forth that you guys carry, and that is a real tribute to you and to the people at the station and the variety that you offer people. And I, for one, living an hour away from Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, am very appreciative of all you run at the different times that you do it.
Yeah, I'd run more if I could, Brett. We run over 500 games this year on the station. So think of 365 days in a year, 500 games over the course of a year. That's a lot. It's more than
it is.
I think it's 100 more than the next closest station in America. So.
It has to be. Absolutely amazing.
Number one, baby. Hey, Brett, enjoy your weekend. I know it's only Thursday. Enjoy your weekend. As always, it's great talking to you, and thanks for hopping on today, man.
Thanks for helping us out. Take care.
Right. Zach Rothrock for producing. Brent Beaird, my co-host today. Shane Matthews, who is on vacation. There's a rumor that Shane's being considered for public office. I don't know where I'm hearing that, but I don't know if it's Robert Kennedy, Donald Trump, or Joe Biden. One of those three is thinking about adding Shane as their Secretary of Commerce. That's the rumor that I'm hearing. I don't know which candidate, whatever candidate you like. So that's what we're hearing anyway. All right, from Zach Rothrock, I'm Seth Harp. This has been PodUp. Oh, Freddie Weaving, got to thank Freddie as well. This has been PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it as always, man. And it's JC and myself tomorrow, right? Thanks. Gotcha, man. Thanks so much, bud.